Welcome back to more FPL content. This will be the team selection for Double Gameweek 32. I recently wildcarded and the plan is to bench boost in this upcoming deadline, and then I've only got one chip remaining, which is the free hit, and I'm going to activate it in blank Gameweek 34. So it's pretty much set in motion, and I've got 2 free transfers at my disposal to optimize the bench boost. I've still got Gabriel in my setup, who is out for the rest of the season, and Justin Kluivert is orange flagged. I do provide injury updates in all of my videos, and in my transfer tips, I did say what the likes of Eddie Howe, Iraola said about Anthony Gordon, Kluivert, and other injured players, which includes Alanga, so be sure to check that out if you haven't done so already. And the best wildcard squad is also available. I have done multiple double recordings for UCL Fantasy and FPL this week to ensure you have all the content necessary. I will be on holiday, but if the Wi-Fi is good enough, I will be going live for both fantasy formats over the next week, and it will conclude extensive coverage for both FPL and UCL Fantasy. On screen you can see FPL Challenge, and this week it is called All Rounder, so you pick 2 defenders, 2 midfielders and 2 forwards, and you can't change the formation. I've gone all in on Crystal Palace and Newcastle, with Mohamed Salah being the only single game week player, but I might make a few tweaks and go a bit different because otherwise it is fairly template with Isak as the captain. And with my 2 free transfers in FPL, that is going to be the main focus of this video, of course, and I'll also preview Double Gameweek 33 as well. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Check all the links in the description for my Patreon and championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League and Spotify can also be found in that description. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. As usual, let's start off with a review of Gameweek 31, which turned out to be a very surprising match day for me in the end. There were some frustrations though, which include my goalkeeper David Raya, who has blanked in consecutive game weeks in the Premier League, and that penalty that Everton got was very contentious to say the least, very soft, and Raya didn't look that great in that situation. I never had that confidence that he would save it, and Ndai has a brilliant record from the spot. But I'm really bullish about Raya in future game weeks, especially in Double Gameweek 33, facing Ipswich Town away and Crystal Palace at home. Then, of course, Arsenal blank in Gameweek 34 and have some tough fixtures afterwards, facing Bournemouth, Newcastle and Liverpool back-to-back, and they end this season against Southampton. But I think Raya is still a good option for both Gameweek 32 and 33. As for my defensive line, this is by far the best they have performed all season, with Munoz scoring against Brighton, delivering 8 points overall. Gavardio kept a clean sheet in a goalless 0-0 ballfest against Man United and got maximum bonus points in the process. And Livramento got an assist, a clean sheet and 11 points against Leicester City. So I couldn't have asked for anything more from these defenders, and I think those 3 will also be good options for Double Gameweek 32 and 33. Now, the midfield was quite disappointing, with the exception of Jacob Murphy, who stole the show on Monday night and scored 2 goals in the first half. It was a rapid start by him, and he just loves playing against Leicester. 13 points against them earlier this season, and now another 16-pointer against the Foxes. But Mohamed Salah was my vice-captain. He blanked against Fulham in a 3-2 loss for Liverpool, who have been excellent all season, but they have kind of dropped off in recent weeks across all competitions. But their gap to second place Arsenal is just too big right now, and they will go on to win this title, and Salah is definitely one to thank there. But once again, we have seen this pattern in the last couple of years where he starts off so well and then kind of fades away towards the end of the season. Cole Palmer was a substitute, just like Bukayo Saka in Gameweek 31. No one expected that for both players to be on the bench, and Ismaila Sarr blanked whilst Eze got 2 assists. So like I mentioned before, there were some gripes I had about my team, and if I had enough money, I'd definitely go for Eze over Ismaila Sarr, but my squad is optimised for the bench boost, and maybe if I'd wildcarded a week later, I would have gone for Kivio instead of Gabriel, which would have given me enough money to then go for Eze over Ismaila Sarr. So sometimes timing is very important when you're making transfers or on the wildcard, but I still think Ismaila Sarr can do very well in the consecutive double game weeks for Crystal Palace. And speaking of which, Jean-Philippe Mateta did extremely well against Brighton. He scored in that 2-1 victory, and he was the only forward to return for me. But Alexander Isak, for him to be my lowest scoring Newcastle player and I captain him, was definitely frustrating. He was subbed off quite early as well, but he was probably a little bit you could say rusty after having some injuries and niggles over the last couple of weeks, and Marmoush had 3 shots on target against Man United and looked the most dangerous Man City player for sure, but that game lacked real quality from both sides, and I think in the end both Man City and Man United were probably quite satisfied with a 0-0 draw. Now looking at my bench, I definitely need more points from them in Game Week 32 if I want to use the bench boost and get a good score from it, because Verbruggen got another 1-pointer and Brighton have looked all over the place in the last couple of matches. Kluivert, of course, missed out once again and he didn't feature against West Ham, whilst Ivanoson, who I sold on the Game Week 30 wildcard, scored a brace. Milenkovic got 1 point as Aston Villa won 2-1 against Nottingham Forest, and Gabriel is out for this season. That's a massive blow for Arsenal, but they responded very well in the Champions League against Real Madrid, winning 3-0 on Tuesday night. But I definitely need to upgrade some of these players, especially on the bench, to really bolster my Game Week 32 prospects and have a successful bench boost as well. So in the end, I got 65 points and a significant green arrow of around 100,000 places, almost at least, but it was a great rank rise there, which was much needed, and I'm looking to build on this momentum. I believe it's 10 consecutive green arrows, and I want to make it 11, 12, and just keep on going until the end of the season, but I usually end campaigns quite strongly after having a fairly kind of dismal start. It's always kind of the same pattern, which I'm looking to break in future seasons, but I think now the aim is to break into that top 100k and solidify myself into that bracket. But let's discuss the transfer plans that I'm looking to do to make that possible. Before I do that though, the prices need to be discussed a little bit quickly. So Gabriel is expected to go down to 6.2 million. This video is recorded on Wednesday morning, and by the time this video is published, Gabriel will likely go down to 6.2 million. The same goes for Jacob Murphy, who is expected to rise to 5.2 million, and the rest will probably stay the same until the deadline essentially. So for the Friday and Saturday, that's where we'll see the majority of these falls and rises there, and I think we could have another hectic deadline stream and also a lot of transfer activity happening, and I would recommend that because we have Europa League action in midweek, Europa Conference League, the Wednesday Champions League game, so don't make early transfers if you can help it. But in general, my squad value is looking quite healthy, so it is around 103.8 million overall for me, but I've only got 0.3 million in the bank. I could move Gabriel to Jakub Kiwior and then perhaps do something like Eze in for Ismail Assar, but that is risky in of itself, and I still have other preferences with my transfer plans, as you'll see in this next section. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What are you looking to do for Double Gameweek 32? But the most kind of simple transfer I could make is Gabriel to Saliba. Why not save extra money with Kiwior? Because there's still the possibility that the likes of White or Timber can play at centre-back from time to time, and Kiwior could drop out of that starting 11, but I think Kiwior will start most games in the Premier League season, so that is still being considered for me. And Saliba did go up in price last week, and I could have done that move a bit earlier, but I didn't want to risk it with only one free transfer, and I wanted to see how Saliba got on against Everton and Real Madrid, so I could make this transfer tonight before the price falls happen, and I could save a bit of value there with Gabriel. So that is something I am looking to do over the next couple of days, but by the time this video is released, I might have done this transfer already. Now, something that is less certain is the midfielder move, because I like Morgan Rogers for Double Gameweek 32 and 33. Of course, Aston Villa only play Southampton away this week, but could Rogers be benched there? That is a possibility, and Justin Kluivert could be available against Fulham. He has only played them once in his career and he scored. I believe he can do the same in Double Gameweek 32, but it all depends on his minutes. Will he start the game, and would it be a 60-70 minute appearance? Closer to 90? I'm not so sure if that will be the case. So I think Rogers is probably the more nailed on option for both game weeks coming up, and he's also got that double in Game Week 33, which Bournemouth lack. They do feature in blank Game Week 34, but that's not really too relevant for me because I've got the free hit and I will be using it during the blank game week. And with Rogers, a lot also depends on Aston Villa on Wednesday night. So remember, this video is recorded before that game takes place, and if Rogers starts there or gets any kind of knocks or injuries, then that could change things a little bit for me. But assuming he goes through that game unscathed and continues his brilliant form with 2 assists against Brighton and also a goal against Nottingham Forest, I think Rogers is a great midfielder to buy for the next 2 game weeks, and then afterwards he is kind of disposable for me, and of course I don't really need him for blank Game Week 34 anyway. So with all of that in mind, this will be my provisional Gameweek 32 team selection with no changes in the goalkeeper position because I do have a full set there, but I am looking to make 2 transfers in the other areas. So David Raya is at home to Brentford, and I'm not that confident about an Arsenal clean sheet, but Brentford did get a 0-0 draw against Chelsea last time out, and Arsenal have a great record against their London rivals, but I do think Brentford can score in this game with the firepower they have up front. Damsgaard is a very underrated creative midfielder. You've also got Mbeumo and Viss up front, and they've got some decent players there. But Arsenal will have their full focus on Real Madrid. The job is not done just yet, despite the 3-0 lead, and I think with this Brentford game, they will have one eye on the Champions League fixture, so there could be a bit of rotation here, and it wouldn't surprise me if Bukayo Saka was rested once more, or at least was subbed off quite early in this particular match. But in my defensive line, I've got a solid platform with Munoz, Gavardio and Livramento. If they can repeat what they did last week, I'd be more than happy. I know 2 of them have a double game week in Munoz and Livramento, but the fixtures aren't the greatest, especially when you look at Crystal Palace from a defensive perspective, facing Man City and Newcastle, both away from home. And of course, Gavardio will face Crystal Palace at home, and he's got the attacking threat, but he is playing as a centre-back, and that could still be a good thing because if Nico O'Reilly and Mateus Nunes play as the fullbacks, they are classified as midfielders in FPL, so they won't get as many bonus points or kind of compete in that BPS, in the numbers compared to Gavardio. So that boosts the Croatians' appeal and also the ability to get a lot of bonus points. But that also depends on the results and if City keep a clean sheet. And I do think he has a few goals and assists in store for us. Now, looking at the midfield, I am hoping for much better this time out. I've got Sarr, Palmer, Murphy and Salah. So 2 double game weekers. Murphy did the business on Monday night. The rest of them blanked. But I think Palmer will start against Ipswich Town at home. Salah is a great captaincy option, but you would favour the doublers this week. And Ismaila Sarr, I think, will deliver in either Gameweek 32 or 33. I think he's only got 1 assist whilst in my FPL team, and that was against Leicester earlier this season. So I am also expecting a little bit more from him. And Eze is probably the superior asset, especially towards the business end of the season. But having both of them could be a nice differential play. And I'm quite bullish on Sarr, despite the recent frustrations. And to complete the starting 11, I've got a template front three of Mateta, Isak and Marmoush, but it is template for a reason. I don't think you can get better than that for the next 2 game weeks at least. Then you might look at Mateus Cunha in blank game week 34. He is back from suspension and faces Leicester at home in that blank game week. And you've also got Evanilson, who is in great form at the moment. And one of my slight regrets was selling him and not keeping him for a little bit longer. But on the wild card, I think that strategy made a lot of sense, and I do prefer these 3 forwards in the grand scheme of things. Before I talk about the captaincy, let's discuss the bench, and it is a bench boost, as you can see, with that kind of light blue outline. Verbruggen is facing Leicester at home. I think that looks fairly decent for a clean sheet, and hopefully Brighton don't let us down here. I've also got Rodgers away to Southampton, but this could be Justin Kluivert at home to Fulham if he is fully fit and available, and Milenkovic and Saliba complete this bench boost. Both of them have home fixtures against Everton and Brentford respectively, and if I can get 15-20 points using this chip, I'll be very happy with that. I would classify these 4 players as the weakest in my 50-man squad. That's the way I usually order my bench boost. You could argue Gavardio out for Saliba or Milenkovic, but I think Gavardio is a more appealing option this week. Either way though, it should be a decent score on paper. Even FPL.team, for example, have an expected points figure of over 100. But if I'm being completely frank, we want actual points, not expected points in XG and XGI and yada yada yada, and that's where the captaincy could come very clutch in terms of securing that massive return. It is template, but I am looking at Isak at the moment. I know he was disappointing in Gameweek 31, but I still think he's the best Newcastle asset overall. And looking at those fixtures against Man United and Crystal Palace, I think Isak will be the difference maker. And if you have the triple captaincy left, I would highly recommend using it this week, but you might have other chips like the assistant manager that you want to use, the wild card, the bench boost, and there are so many chips, of course, in this game, and you don't want them to clash. You can't use 2 of them at the same time. I have made a video already on this, the chip strategy guide, discussing the best available kind of time frames to use every single chip and also the way every single booster works. Mateta is my vice captain, and for Gameweek 33, of course, Marmoush would jump right to the top of the queue, and Bukayo Saka is a player I'm looking to bring in for that double game week, but I don't think I need to bring in Saka a week earlier. As I mentioned before, I think his minutes will be managed once more against Brentford, and I think Cole Palmer could outscore him in Game Week 32, and you will see my captaincy rankings in future videos on live streams, and if possible, if the Wi-Fi actually works, I will show you the graphics in the deadline stream on Saturday. But that is the 50-man squad. It looks very strong with this chip, and hopefully it can be a decent score. I can get this chip out of the way and then focus on the starting 11 from now until the end of the season. But one step at a time, let's do well in Double Gameweek 32 first, and the free hit will be deployed in blank Gameweek 34. Before I go to the FPL.team section and preview Gameweek 33, let's discuss expected points. David Raya has 4.4 at the moment. Munoz, Gavardio and Livramento have decent figures, but nothing spectacular. They definitely outperformed the expected points in Gameweek 31, and all of these figures are taken by Fantasy Football Hub. The likes of Sarr, Palmer, Murphy and Salah have good numbers, to be fair, but Murphy's is quite low considering it is a double game week. Mateta and Isak are the standouts with over 10, and Marmoush has a relatively healthy number, but nothing too spectacular. Verbruggen, Rodgers, Milenkovic, Saliba averaging around 4 expected points. If they can get 16 between them, that's fairly decent, I think, with the bench boost. I think people have quite unrealistic expectations with this chip. You don't need to have 40, 50 points from a bench boost, but if I could somehow get anywhere near that, I'd be very happy. Maybe the happiest man in FPL terms. That remains to be seen, but let's see what happens from now until the deadline, because there could be some tweaks to my transfers. Maybe Kluivert remains and I don't buy Morgan Rodgers, or perhaps I go in a different direction. As we approach the business end of the season, we've got back-to-back double game weeks followed up by a blank. It's very important to visualize these lineups with transfers and chips, and I think FPL Team is one of the best resources you can use in terms of websites, and it really makes things very clear with what you want to do in terms of chip strategies and transfer plans. So David Raya is in goal, away to Ipswich Town and at home to Crystal Palace in Game Week 33. I could buy Saka to replace Cole Palmer and triple up on Arsenal with William Saliba as well. And the same goes for the Eagles with Munoz, Sarr and Mateta facing Bournemouth at home and Arsenal away. Both Gavardio and Marmoush also double against Everton away and Aston Villa at home. And then Morgan Rodgers, who could come in, of course, for double Game Week 32, he faces Newcastle at home and Man City away in double Game Week 33. Then I've got Salah away to Leicester and Isak facing Aston Villa, also away from home. And my bench has Verbruggen away to Brentford, Murphy and Livramento facing Aston Villa, and Milenkovic facing Tottenham away. That's not a bad bench boost, but I'd much rather bench boost in 32 based on the fixtures and the players I've got available. For those with more West Ham assets facing Southampton, Jarrod Bowen, Ariel and Wan-Bissaka, you definitely prefer that Game Week 33 bench boost. The likes of Kanate or a secondary or tertiary Liverpool asset could also look very enticing against Leicester away, and that's where the chip strategies are very important, because one chip will affect the other. The way I wildcarded in Game Week 30 has kind of resulted in me bench boosting in Game Week 32. If I did it a week later and went for that West Ham asset or two, then it would have been a Game Week 33 bench boost for me. And if you don't have the free hit, I'd highly recommend bench boosting now, and most people will have a decent bench this week. That's the way I look at it. But if you have the free hit, you don't need to worry too much about it, and you could actually afford to bench boost in the game week just beforehand in 33. But I think I've got a solid platform for both game weeks, and as we approach blank game week 34 in a couple of weeks' time, I will talk about the best free hit team for that specific game week, activate the chip myself, and also hope for another great score. But those are my plans at the moment with my remaining chips, the bench boost and the free hit, and the bench boost is active this week. That wraps up the Double Gameweek 32 team selection. A massive shout out to the likes of Napstars and Paredes for gifting 15 memberships in the recent UCL Fantasy deadline stream. And thank you to everyone who watched this video and those that tune into every single UCL Fantasy and FPL video and live stream. It's very much appreciated. If you enjoyed this one or found it useful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so don't miss a single upload or live stream for both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League and Spotify can also be found in that description. I'll see you very soon for those FPL and UCL Fantasy videos and live streams. There are more headed your way, and I wish you all the best of luck until the end of the season.